Hello, everybody. I'm feeling a little bit visory today in honor of our great funky savior, Funky Kong, here in funky mode of Funky Freeze. I actually haven't played this game in a very long time since the Wii U original. I have, this thinking guys is hanging out, please. Radical. I've always wanted to see this. It does reveal itself. Funky Kong never shows his eyes. I can't show my eyes around him. It'd be really awkward. No one wants to have extended eye contact for that long. Yeah, just let me in as the dude. I'm set. Yeah, honestly, like, anytime, alright, so the old games, the guy would lift up his shades. That's because that was a death threat every time. He would always just assert his dominance the moment you saw those pupils, and you'd just be like, okay, I can never, ever look at him when his shades are up, or else I'm just going to die. You cannot have the physique of Donkey Kong, but then be a chillax bro without having murderous intent if anything goes wrong. So, you know, this is submission on my part. I admit it. But also, visors and shades can be cool. So I don't see anything wrong. But yeah, I remember this game being a real good time back in the day. And I have a lot of experience with Donkey Kong Country in general. I'm one of the old guard, one of those. I played Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo and also GBA, like all three of them, all three times for the classic trilogy, and also Returns on the Wii, and then I played it on the 3DS as well. So I might be just another one of those platformer people, but this game's really good, and knowing I haven't touched it in many years makes me feel old. So what better way than to chillax with Funky Kong to have like an experience that can actually kind of let me chit chat a bit maybe and re-experience this game. I'm looking forward to just seeing how it goes. I'm also realizing I don't think I can skip this. So we're just, we're jamming. I haven't even looked if there's, I think this is the same exact scene. I don't think Funky Kong is anywhere in this intro to accommodate. This is actually a pretty big deal at the time because I'm also a big Cranky Kong guy. Anytime anyone's like smarmy and old, you can't help but have a soft spot for them. Or just old people in general. Someday I'll be old and I'll really love myself. But until then, I'll love the other old people for me. I just won't admit when that happens. That way, when I seem so much happier with myself, it'll just be like, wow, Corto is just really on the up and up this year. And I won't tell them it's because I've secretly admitted I'm old. You don't age in space, it's fine. I think we're almost there too. I just want to see Funky Kong barrel through. I gotta bust out of a plane. I remember the plane segment at least. Wait, what is that voice sample? Alright, let him out. Bust the funk. I remember what a big deal this was at the time too when this game came out, and they're like, wow, there's swimming physics. Or I'm talking about the original, not the funky mode. Look at this guy. What a champ. I'm gonna press buttons. I can do my little twirl. This is gonna be so nice and pleasant. I'm really sad he doesn't just, that's a good cannonball. Why doesn't he just slide down on his surfboard if he's going down the water? That's a missed opportunity, my man. Alright, yeah, I can adjust to this. This should be fine. Spin. Look at me go. I get to reacquaint myself a little. If I remember right with these old games, I have to jump again. Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's a lot of momentum. Alright, it's been a while. I am very born and raised on the SNES ones. The momentum is something I've got to remember. Alright, I can slap. I love Donkey Kong. He's like a more natural, like, alternation between his stuff. And then he's just my man. He just slaps both his hands at once. He's got his own rhythm. a thing I was thinking about too, getting up to this, is since I'm already talking about how not old I am, along with the SNES Donkey Kong Country, there's always got to be a shout out to the cartoon. You know, everyone's favorite CGI animated cartoon, which definitely has aged perfectly in every regard. And you have to really appreciate all the stuff that goes in that. Every time I see that show, I just love it. It has continued to age perfectly to me because I am a fella who really likes its cheesiness. I almost went right past that. Please give me that. No, I'm going too fast. Oh, we're gonna get him. Right? There we go. But, like, there's just something about that show, man. Like, I love it. It has all the classic, like, issues or tropes of 90s cartoons. Yeah, perfectly stated. It's just something about it. And, like, most of the voice actors try pretty decently in that game. Can I slap this? You know what? Give me a second. And I also said game. Oops. Everything's a game to me. The game of life. But, I just, like, can listen to clips of that show and just be like, man, I really appreciate the vocal effort that goes into it. I sadly don't remember anyone's, like, names in terms of the cast, but I really like that it's a show who just decided that they needed to have an actual, like, professional singer to handle most of Donkey Kong's, like, vocal performances for songs. But then it's got that 90s thing of, like, oh, yeah, we're a 90s kid cartoon, so every single episode in some form is going to have a song. It's always going to happen. It doesn't matter if it's 10 seconds or a full-on minute. And it doesn't matter how terrible the writing is on every single one of those. You have to have music. That was just like the thing. Because, you know, kids couldn't be trusted to have any attention span if silly, catchy music wasn't playing every like 10 to 15 minutes in your half an hour running time. But there's so many good ones that slap in that now. Like, I know the internet's pretty famous on a couple of them, and Nobody's Hero is probably one of the best things that's ever come out of Donkey Kong's mouth, because that one is great. I'm trying to remember, I have a couple that like are really in my memory, because you go to the library as a kid, and so they didn't really have VHS episodes of the series a lot, but anyone who knows this cartoon pretty well would know that there was a quote-unquote movie in the Legend of the Crystal Coconut, which was just like 3 episodes pasted together in a lovingly incorrect order. It's probably one of the best things to talk about, in that, like, they're like, okay, we gotta put something out for all the kiddos who are not getting this on the network. Maybe they're at home. Maybe the parents got to be able to drive out their ship to the orbiting library and get their VHS tapes, so then the kids can get an experience of old Donkey Kong. So they're just like, here we go. Here is this 3-episode part of somewhat connected episodes, except they did it wrong, which is probably the best thing, because it mainly involves a couple of the pirates in that show just hanging out, being boys, getting into trouble. And there is a sequence of episodes. Oops, I just wanted to jump up here. Please give me that. Where Donkey Kong loses his memory in, I think, about the middle of it, like the 2nd episode of the 3. So as he's going around having hijinks, amnesia adventures with all the bad guys being like, yeah, you're totally a crocodile. Look at all these scales you have. Look at these big fangs you have. Wow. And then, like, you know, that won't last forever. Good old Diddy Kong comes to the rescue to shake his buddy out of it. And Diddy's like, man, don't you remember all these sweet times we had together? Think about the time you did this and that and this thing. And so, perfect time to fill in a little bit of the TV runtime and recycling footage. And in this VHS in particular, they start recycling the future. Diddy has a very interesting sense of fond memories with Donkey Kong, because they specifically remember a scene that happens later in the cut of the VHS. And it's like the best thing. I love that no one in the distribution company really cared that much to actually check the background of the episodes. They're just like, yeah, why don't we just go do these couple of things? All right. I can't pick that up. I can just pick up the enemies. But that's sweet. There's so many good moments in that. Like, for other people on the internet who's heard a couple of songs, Leo Luster. It hurts to be this hip. Really? Oh, man, you think about that. I know they had Funky Kong on there, but really, Funky Kong is deserving of that song. Meanwhile, I'm going to ruin these guys' whole career. I love the abuse. I think that's why I wanted to hit, right? No. No. Look at that fuzz and those pearly whites. What a great guy. But yeah, I would say for anyone who's willing to pay the bill with the Bezos, the show is on Amazon Prime, and if you ever see, or Amazon Video at least, and if you ever see yourself wanting a good love of campy 90s-ness, it's really the place to be. I think there's a lot of good humor. The internet pulls from it quite a lot. And it's a hard show not to love, because even though it's got a bunch of like CGI nonsense being the early 90s, so you know everything's plastic and just like, especially in season 2, where everyone gets worse in quality, like amazingly bad. The lighting just goes kaput. Everyone looks like soft plastic. Pupils are larger. Stinking, oh, what's his name? Oh, the soldier lizard. Is it just Clump? I don't think it's Clump. Maybe it is Clump. Oh, and then Crusher. Yeah. But, like, Clump just gets the biggest puppy dog eyes all the time in the second season because they just, like, couldn't animate little pupils anymore. It's like everyone has the same size of big old dinky pupils, and like the plot gets more absurd in some of those. Diddy quickly falls off the ride into jumping shark degenerate territory, and it's so good. It's so good in the worst way possible. I'm not going to describe every single thing I love about season 2 and some of the stupid plot lines they do, but trust me, it's worth the price of admission. I will forever be a changed man in my view on Diddy Kong because of the things he says in Season 2. And honestly, the rest of you would too. Maybe you wouldn't pick him in Smash, or maybe you'd feel more inclined to pick him in Smash because of it. Either way, please go and see it yourself. Oh. If I didn't know any better, I would badly sing some of those too. But maybe that's not allowed to begin with, even if I remembered all the words of the songs. But besides the cartoon, I played the original. If we had to talk about the original 3, Donkey Kong Country 1 was my bread and butter for the longest time. Kid me loved to play it a lot. Let me jump on you, bro. Oh. Okay. It hurt a little, but it's fine. But the first game I had all the time. I only really rented the second now and again. I remember doing the third once, and I was kind of confused as a kid because the aesthetic of 3 being so different, where it's just like, welcome to Donkey Kong Country, except you're in Canada. And it's like, well, okay, I guess we're in Canada now. And little me didn't get it. I was just like, I sensed something is wrong here. The second game, at least, had a lot of cohesion with some of the visual elements. Ooh, get me back up there. I need to make this Kong rich. So, like, the second one, you know, kind of firmly established its style. You go around after the first game on your own little big old Donkey Kong head island, and you get a lot of cool, like, environments that were pretty amazing at the time, admittedly. Everyone loved it. It was so cutting tech. And the second one comes around, it's like, all right, now you're on a giant crocodile instead of a giant monkey head. And, like, it got a little darker, so, like, you know, quote-unquote more real when it talks about stuff like that. And then the third one comes around, and not only is it just in Canada, that's when like all of Rare's designs for that game just got stranger. Like, we're talking about the game where the first boss is literally just a giant barrel with eyes and teeth. And that kind of like freaked me out. And you may try to tell me, all right, Corshell, the first game had a boss that was literally in a giant oil drum. But that one had no eyes, all right? I'm just going to say no eyes involved. It didn't try to eat me. It was just there. And eventually, it just kind of, like, imploded. At least how they fixed it in the GBA games, where they knew to, like, actually give you some, like, semblance that you were fighting something and not just watching a barrel explode. But yeah, 3's just like, wow, we don't have the time or budget to make any more cool designs, so we're just going to be like, well, hey, here's this barrel with teeth. Here's this snowman. What if you fight an evil snowman? It doesn't make sense. It never makes sense. Can I stop at my own shop? Do I get a discount for me? Oh, the bird. Oh, man, the employee discount? Great. Not that I need these, probably. I love he wears the shades. You know? Yeah, this is obviously all we need. Bodacious blue. No one will know the difference. That's good. I'm glad I stopped there. Alright, but anyways, I don't just want to like dunk on 3 because beyond the fact the aesthetics just completely go off the rails, I do think the level design is pretty sharp in 3. So don't let me just like be a downer. I talk about all this in 3 out of a very large area of love. Like, 3 was the one I spent a lot of time on the Game Boy Advance versions, because that was actually it and 2 for this, I'm about to say. The GBA games, since I didn't own the second and third games, was my way to really officially play through the further entries. Yeah, I know there's stuff on, like, oh, Did You Know Gaming, I think, right? Was the place that was saying they were just like the B team. So I guess it shows. But, with, oh, heck, they're flinging the fish. That's right. I gotta jump on these. I guess I could just try to hover, but, you know, we're gonna go for it. But with the GBA, it really gave me a chance to play those games because, you know, I'm a wee baby boy. You don't really have the money to buy Super Nintendo games when you're really small up here in space. So, like, being able to see the games come out new on Game Boy Advance was my time. That was when you go up to your parents. So you're just like, please, I want this. I really need to play the second and third Donkey Kong Country. And for the record, I also played the first. I remember owning the first on SNES, but I remember first beating it on the GBA. I beat all of them on the GBA first, I guess, for the record. And that was just such a good way. Like, sure, all the SNES GBA ports might have, like, some kind of like snafus in that, like, the color decoration, so they would appear well on the screen and everything. But those were really, like, good ports. Like, they worked with what they had pretty well for their spree of putting SNES games on a smaller screen with worse power. So I'm really glad I got to play 3 on the GBA and got to try out like the new levels they added and everything, and the like apparently good new boss, but it wasn't that good. So at least it didn't help the idea they didn't have many good designs by the time they figured out the design. Oh man, actually, since I'm talking about that, if we're talking about new boss designs that don't make any sense in the later Rare years, we're going to bring up in Donkey Kong Country 2. So you get near the end of the game, and they do like this fake out where you're just like, wow, that's totally Donkey Kong. You're going to be safe and saved. and they kind of whisk him away, and they're like, here's this new area. And then I really should have hit that. I'm just throwing without thinking. But they're just like, here's this new area to do the stretch of the game with. Well, in GBA version, they rightly realize, like, that's kind of a bummer. You just worked through this entire world near the end of the game. Are we okay, dude? I see you. I'm worried. There we go. They rightly decided, there should be a boss at this one stretch. So they invent a boss, and like so it's a Kremling. It stays being a lizard, but the dude is the most triangle-chested, like thin-limbed thing. He's supposed to be this like big buff Kremling, and it's just like you took a weirdly so it's just like the old Power Ranger action figures, where like the ones with the swappable heads. I had one of these where you press the button on the belt, and it's like bam, you go from like their normal face to masked. But they have to compensate for the fact they put a spinning head like piece of plastic in this thing. So they have like okay limbs, but their torso is huge to compensate for the head spinning spring mechanism. And this Kremling in 2's GBA version, just like that. This guy has the biggest chest in the world and little arms by comparison. He's just like there, and he's also screaming bright orange, which, okay. To be fair, that's partially Game Boy Advance, and there's plenty of orange Kremlings out in the world, so it's not like that unusual. But it really stuck out to me when I was first doing it, because I was just like, why this man so silly? I don't think I'm afraid of this. And then I wasn't, and then you beat it. Let me get up here. I know I don't even have all the pieces, but I see it. I can't just let this go. I'm doing terrible for collection. There's no bonus levels. Here, do the thing. Yeah, do the reference. We're talking about the SNES games. We're gonna give it a little bit of love. Just let me hear the main beat. Yeah. I don't even have to worry about that. Funky Kong cheats. Oh, he goes so slow though. But yeah, good times with that Zoe Kremling. There's so many things too. I remember I was totally like blind as a kid. Yeah, the guy is is so goofy. Rare really just had to work with what they got at the time. But Busted Bayou, the bonus level. But like also because you're a wee lad, you see the game that says it's Donkey Kong Country, like the first one, and you've played a decent amount of the SNES game. I remember before I beat the GBA version, I got to the factory in... Can I just walk down here? I'm walking down here. Neat. I got to the factory, the... what? Kremkroc Incorporated? Question mark? Man, I'm a fake fan. But you get to the factory level, so like that's a good 2/3 of the game. So little me had a good idea what to expect when I saw the Game Boy Advance version come out. And the very first thing that stuck out in my mind, and this continued to like baffle me as a little one who didn't know the realities of trying to port stuff and limitations, but like you get to the world map in the Game Boy Advance version, and immediately little me's like, What's going on? This map, it's different. Why is this different? This isn't what I remember. This said it was the first Donkey Kong Country. Why is my map different? Because, like, they were just single screen images in the NES games, besides the overworld of 3 being traversable. So it's just like, oh man, why did they change this? I don't get it. I already liked this as it was the first time. They didn't need to change it. I have absolutely no idea inside my child brain why they would purposefully choose to adjust this map when the first one worked just fine. And, there's more obvious reasons to the adult mind of like, oh, technical limitations. That sprite's a little big. They'd never survive the color adjustment, the work in the GBA's palette limitations, etc. Lots of perfectly valid reasons. But to me, it was an affront, sort of. They're lucky. I still liked the game, and I played the level, and you're like, all right, levels? Yeah, they're what I remember. Level's pretty good. I'm content. I cannot complain with the fact I can still donk my Kong and platform as I expect him to, at least in one, till you get to the bosses. And I remember, anyone who's played SNES Donkey Kong Country will say, relatively speaking to some of the platforming segments in that game, the bosses are jokes. They are all very simple patterns. I was literally just explaining the barrel boss just drops dudes that you can just take out, and then it just decides it's going to be dead. So they, to their credit, decided that they were going to mix it up slightly in the GBA versions and give invulnerability periods and different parts to the battles in the GBA version. But then that just blindsided me again. I was like, wait, this is different again. And then you beat him and Cranky Kong comes and he's just spouting stuff at you. Like, wow, you sure beat the snot out of that stupid beaver. And I was just like, why is Cranky Kong talking to me now? I didn't invite him to be here. I know I was just saying I like old men, but I haven't reached that part of my character arc at this point in my childhood. So I'm like, Cranky Kong, please just leave. I don't remember you being here in the SNES original. Can you just beat it, old man? And then it gets worse, sort of. Because in the second game, the bosses get better. There's some pretty neato bosses in the second game. And little me remembered that too from renting it. Because I think I made it to the ghost area in the SNES original when, prior to me owning the Game Boy Advance game. So, whoop, that put me way up here. So, you fight a boss and you're like, man, I really like fighting the Sword. The Sword is a cool dude. I would beat him up again. So then you go to beat him up again, but now in the GBA version, stinking Swanky Kong shows up. And he's like, oh, hey, kiddo. You want to fight this boss under a time limit to learn some extra lives? And it's like, no, I just want to fight this boss again. And he's like, well, too bad, because, if you want to fight this boss, you have to pay me money to have a go at it. And I was like, no, I just want to fight the cool boss again. Why do I have to pay you anything? You're a swindler. I don't even bother to go to your stupid bonus quizzes. Why are you shaking me down to refight the boss I want to fight? And this was especially aggravating because there's cheat codes in the GBA games, including the way to unlock all the levels. So naturally, you're a little kid and you're just like, I gotta see what's ahead. Please, let me just go ahead and check out these levels. I gotta know. I'm impatient. I gotta know what's there. I'm gonna check out these boss fights. But then, if you use that level unlock, it marks everything is cleared. So you get to the boss fight, you go straight to it, you're ready to see what's ahead and beat up some baddies, and there's good old Swanky Kong, he's just, gatekeeping you from finding out the stuff you never played. And it's like, no, Swanky, you are my sworn enemy. I cannot believe you're doing this to me. I worked so hard to find, I think via cheat code books you had to buy, the way to go ahead and get to these bosses I was too impatient to naturally just game towards, and now you're trying to tell me I gotta pay you for it. And I just hated that man. He was the worst time. You really think about it, and I understand it's karma. Little me should have known better that Swanky Kong wasn't just a gatekeeper of fun. He was a dignity checker. Because he's just first one's free, kid, except you didn't do the first one. The devs did. And it's like, oh, man, yeah, he's caught me. He knows I haven't beaten a single dang thing in this game. Now I'm going to have to just start a new save file and give it a go again. I guess I'll actually complete the game as I crash. And then I did. It got better with time, but I still remember that where it's just like, why am I paying this man in order to go ahead and fight bosses I just want to fight? And then they fixed it in 3. They realized nobody cared. In 3, Swanky Kong's no longer shaking you down. He's just at his silly virtual reality tunnel since they took out the carnival game in 3 from SNES to GBA. Because they're just like, check out this cool rotating, like, tunnel thing, mini game, I guess. If you want to get 100%, you've got to be able to get the banana bird by clearing my silly knockoff Sonic the Hedgehog like bonus stage runner as Dixie Kong, because Kiddy Kong is too babby. He's gonna trip on his socks trying to go down there. Which fair. We gotta protect the child. Kiddy Kong's okay. I'm gonna say that. Thumbs up for Kiddy Kong. Maybe just because the design, to me, at the time as a kid, I was just like, this guy has silly pajamas with footsies, and you just let him sit there. Idle animation was hilarious, because you would just, like, watch him pull at his sock. You see him start pulling it longer and longer, and then he's like, lets go, and he ends up smacking himself, like, whiplash. And he just starts crying there for a little bit. I think, well, no, maybe he just does like the face just like kind of thing. But I found that hilarious. You're like, all right, fine. Dixie Kong only has bubblegum. But my kid, Kitty, smacks himself for shenanigans. Perfectly smooth transition, Funky Kong. I appreciate every part of your cool. But yeah, that was great to me. And now, oh boy, and I think about returns and the fact that I need to do a little bit of revisiting that. I remember playing through it in the Wii and getting it in the 3DS because it was like on sale, cheap on the eShop. So I was able to pick up the version and replay it again with a couple of the quality of life fixes. And that one was pretty good. It's one I should also revisit, but this one was more important because it's been longer.